I'm going to talk about one of the feminist women that have influenced me a lot. She is US American, but she has an Irish background. That's very important to say. And she's still alive, a biologist, but also she does technoscience. She's a philosopher. So she's working interdisciplinarity. That means that she does different things, and she's an intellectual, feminist. And I'm gonna base this a conference on the Cyborg Manifesto that she wrote in 1985, sorry. And I have to switch the language because my head is in German and now I have to switch it into English. But she, what I am trying to do is to demonstrate that the Cyborg Manifesto already, let's say, gave some important tools for today that we're in the context of artificial intelligence. And then at the end of the conference, you can tell me if my hypothesis is correct or not. We can discuss together. So the name of the conference is Haraway's Informatics of Domination and Technopolitics in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. This is the way I'm gonna go through the conference. First, I'm gonna explain you the terminology that Haraway uses. Haraway is a monster, it's a theoretical monster. She uses a lot of, she's a very complex person. She has a very complex mind. I am only gonna focus in very fundamental concepts, and from there, I'm gonna develop the rest. Also, I'm gonna contextualize the past with the present. How can we locate Donna Haraway in the context of artificial intelligence? And if that is even possible. And then I'm gonna talk also about ecosystems of resistance, because the reason why I choose Donna Haraway is because she talks a lot about resistance, but from a very specific perspective. And this perspective means including women of color and also queer subjectivities. The figure of the cyborg is actually a post-gender figure. So, and I will give you some examples of these ecosystems of resistance today, and we will go to a conclusion later. There are two questions that I consider for this conference. The first one is how feminist, decolonial, and critical theories reveal artificial intelligence as a site of power, struggle, and possibility. Then the second question, the key question is artificial intelligence a neutral technology or a new infrastructure or is a new infrastructure for organizing social hierarchies? Let's go back in time, because I also like to present to you how a feminist builds, or how a theorist, how a person, how a theoretical researcher, a scientist builds on their theories. And in this example, Donna Haraway, in the Cyborg Manifesto, she talks about Herbert Marcuse. She doesn't focus on Herbert Marcuse. No, Marcuse was very, very important in the 60s. Then she also mentions Michel Foucault. Foucault is important in the Cyber Manifesto. I will explain why. Of course, the concept of biopolitics. And also another fundamental theories that was very important for the construction of the cyborg figure was the Chicana Chela Sandoval. And let's go one by one. First, Herbert Marcuse, as you know, he was a Berliner, born in Berlin. He escaped the Second World War. He went to the United States, and he lived in exile there for a long time. He was the teacher of Angela Davis. No, he was involved indirectly or directly with the Black Panthers through Angela Davis. And he was a very important figure in the student movement in the 68. And he was fundamental because he wrote this fantastic book, From One-Dimensional Man. One-dimensional men, I made it a mistake. One-dimensional men to the death of nature. And there is also this other book. I'm gonna read, this is a quote by Donna Haraway coming from the manifesto. From one-dimensional men, Marcuse, to death of nature, is another author, Merchant, the analytic resources developed by progressives have insisted on the necessary domination of techniques and recall us to an imagined organic body to integrate resistance. This sounds a little bit complicated, but it's actually very simple. What she's saying is that Marcuse set up a very important theoretical terrain for us to think how technology is actually an instrument or a tool for domination. And that he opened also the path for us to imagine the possibilities of emancipation. Now let's go to Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault, as you know, it's a very important French theorist that built up the concept of biopolitics. And I quote again Donna Haraway. I am making an argument for the cyborg as a fiction, mapping our social and bodily reality, and as an imaginative resource suggesting some very fruitful couplings. Michel Foucault's biopolitics is a flaccid premonition of cyborg politics, a very open field. This means that Donna Haraway in the Cyborg Manifesto, she's integrating different theories. It's a long list, it's not only these three. I just took the most fundamentals. There are many others, including, for instance, Octavia Butler. There are other theories, many feminists. But Foucault plays a very important role here. Why? Because Foucault talks about the concept of biopolitics. No? And biopolitics means, or it's a concept, it's a philosophical and political term that refers to the government or the rule of the living via rationality, Marcuse again, and epistemology, as a practice to introduce the logic of power into people's lives. Foucault was fundamental with the concept of biopolitics because this concept refers basically how the state, how institutions rule our lives, not only our lives, but also our bodies. Now that's why the biopolitics. It's the control of the subjectivity of the subject. She builds on this concept her own concept, as we will see. Haraway precisely shifts biopolitics into what she calls biotechnopolitics. What she is doing here is basically adding the question of technology. How institutions, the government, uses tools, in this case technology, to control and dominate subjectivities. And she frames a social and material reality entangled with accelerated technologies that are used for domination. And I will argue that we can use this turn or this interpretation or this impulse in the context of artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is also a technology. And it's a technology that is used by the government, that is used by institutions. So we are again in the same terrain as Michel Foucault research, which is biopolitics. The only thing that is new is a new technological tool, artificial intelligence. Here, there is a provocant question that is currently into debate, which is artificial intelligence only used for domination, or can artificial intelligence be otherwise? This is a fantastic question that has different interpretations, different positions. There are people arguing, I think 3 weeks ago, there was an article by TAS. Someone, for instance, an argument saying artificial intelligence is inherently anti-democratic, which means you cannot do anything positive out of it. That's a position, but that's a position. There are other people saying, no, it is possible, because the tool itself doesn't do anything. The problem is who programs artificial intelligence. So if we put people that are programming or building this technology that have democratic perspectives, eventually the tool can develop into a tool for democracy or for resistance. And Haraway, the position of Haraway is that technology, she was not saying specifically artificial intelligence, but she was saying that technology has the possibility to go otherwise. And she was actually, with the Cyborg Manifesto, arguing that we, feminists specifically, must reclaim the machine. Now we go to another figure that is very important for Donna Haraway, and is Chela Sandoval. Chela Sandoval is a Chicana that lives in the United States. She studied in California. She's a person of color, and she, in the United States, I don't know if you know, but if you don't know, I let you know. The United States has been a country with a long history of racial brutality, police violence, repression, very racist, right? And Chela Sandoval, as a person of color, as a Chicana, she did a fantastic analysis precisely of the oppression that white people, I mean the government, the police, do towards Chicanos or towards feminists of color, including Black feminists of color. And she wrote this book, Methodologies for the Oppressed. And Donna Haraway took a person of color, a woman, they knew each other. Actually, Sandoval took a seminar under Donna Haraway, and Haraway was a person that was very inclusive, thinking like, okay, Chela Sandoval, okay, her book, her knowledge is very radical, is very relevant, is very important, and from Herbert Marcuse, but basically Foucault and Chela Sandoval, she builds up something radical. But before we get there, we have to understand where these things come from. So in the case of Chela Sandoval, I quote again Donna Haraway in her Cyborg Manifesto. Chela Sandoval, from a consideration of specific historical moments in the formation of new political voice, called women of color, has theorized a hopeful model for political identity called oppositional consciousness, born of the skills for reading webs of power by those refused stable membership in the social categories of race, sex, and class. And I quote again Donna Haraway, epistemology is about knowing the difference. For Haraway, that's a reason why I like Donna Haraway, is because she understood in a time period in which there was a lot of, it was the 80s, the 70s, but there was a very strong feminist movement in the United States at that time. The problem was, and Donna Haraway saw, a very sad problem. First, the feminist movement was very open, 68, no? The 70s, the sexual revolution and all these things. But from the beginning, in the 80s, the feminist movement started becoming very hegemonic, very white, and very, yeah, like kind of, okay, we are the feminists, we're white, but the questions about women of color, Black feminists, Chicano feminists, not interested. So the Chicanas, for instance, Chela Sandoval, she started doing her own theory on her own, because there was not really much to discuss with white feminists. However, Donna Haraway was a feminist, a white feminist with a lot of epistemological privilege that say, okay, Chela Sandoval is an incredible woman, and I want her to include in our feminism, because white feminism can only function if we integrate the voices from the periphery. And not only that, she also argues in the Cyborg Manifesto that actually let's say, the emancipation, the movements for justice, the people that should be leading these movements are the ones that are the most oppressed. Why? Because they understand how power functions. So she gives them a very important location in resistance and cyborg politics. Now, I quote again Donna Haraway. I argue for politics rooted in claims about fundamental changes in the nature of class, race, and gender in an emergent system of world order, analogous in its novelty and a scope to be created by industrial capitalism. We are living through a movement from an organic industrial society to a polymorphous information system from all work to all play, a deadly game. So she saw in the 80s that there was been kind of a turn. There was something changing in society from industrialization to a new kind of capitalistic system, right? It was the system in which that was the time also when computers started to be more around, when informatics started to get more socialized. That was the time that she saw, okay, digital technologies are coming more. There was a change in different things. I quote again, communication technologies, for instance, computers, communication technologies and biotechnologies are the crucial tools for crafting our bodies. These tools embody and enforce new social relations for women worldwide. These new technologies do different things. For instance, they crack the idea of gender, because through these technologies today, we can, for instance, not only gender, but also reproduction. Through these new technologies also, we can, for instance, have a legal abortion. We can have a dispositive in order not to reproduce. We can also change the gender today. So she saw these kind of changes, that there was different technologies that started giving different possibilities to what we understand as a human, as a body. Things were changing. And that was very important later, specifically in our time. That was very important for queer politics, trans politics, gender politics, the change of the body, the cyborg that is able to transform the body. That can go as an emancipation for many queer subjectivities, very important, but it can also go into something that technologies, now also other cyborgs, that are doing things in order not to die, for instance, or people that are taking a lot of multivitamins or in order to hack their body in order to become the strongest and perfect kind of body. That's, that also goes that way. Haraway again, I quote again Haraway because I really like people to read her own words and not just me describing her, but that you really get into dialogue with her. I quote again, communication technologies depend on electronics. Yeah, the electronics are very important. When we talk about electronics, I am talking about microchips. Everything almost has a microchip today. If you have a cell phone, you have a microchip with you. That's kind of electronics, yeah? Communication technologies depend on electronics. Modern states, multinationals, corporations, military power, welfare state apparatuses, satellite systems, political processes, fabrication of our imaginations, labor control systems, medical construction of our bodies, commercial pornography, the international division of labor, and religious evangelism, this is Peter Thiel, for instance, depend intimately upon electronics. We are crossed by technology. Even the wash machine has now microchips, for example, yeah? Microelectronics, says Haraway, is the basis for simulacra. That is, of copies without or the original. I don't know if you have noticed what is happening with artificial intelligence, but I have noticed because I also do music. In the case of for us musicians, it has been terrifying. Why? Because now you have Spotify, now you have YouTube, and now you have different platforms that produce music. You don't even know who did produce it. Even the algorithm is producing the music itself. No need for human beings making music. It sounds a little bit exaggerated, but once you are a musician, you will realize that we are losing our jobs, seriously. Then if you go to graphic designers, now everyone can produce a picture with artificial intelligence. You don't need anymore a graphic designer. You can do it.
Kannst du mal ein Stück geben von...
No problem.
Ich möchte bitte nochmal alle, die das Mikrofon anhaben, es zu muten, weil das stört den Vortrag. Ja, Dankeschön.
So, no, this is the problem that things are becoming a copy of the original. No, artificial intelligence is copying everything. Also text, the topic of plagiarism. Now you have all these translation tools, you have all these things, and you are feeding the machine with all the text that has been written by human beings, and the machines just they learn from it, and there is a very huge problem because nobody has consulted the authors if they are allowed to feed the machine with their knowledge. It has been just done, and it keeps on going and going and going. So have you watched the Matrix movie? No, it talks also about the problem of simulacra. That's French philosophy, also post-structuralism. When we talk about Donna Haraway, it's very important to understand the term cybernetics. And the closest definition of cybernetics that can be entangled with Donna Haraway is this book, or this author, Norbert Wiener. He is the closest foundational, gives the closest foundational definition, who defines cybernetics as the scientific study of control and communication in the animal and in the machine. Cybernetics, on one hand, is they control, but on the other hand, we have the responsibility to use our scientific knowledge in order to study these problems, yeah? Now, the topic of the talk is actually informatics of domination. When we talk about informatics of domination, what are we precisely talking about? Well, the informatics of domination is what Donna Haraway did in the Cyborg Manifesto. It's basically a sketch of the historical transformation of systems of power and production. As we saw, first we have the Industrial Revolution, then we have later these systems where Haraway is located, computers, digital culture, and we are gonna move to the next stage, which is now the huge revolution, technological revolution, that is artificial intelligence. In the 80s, 85, the cyborg era, what I mean by that is when Haraway wrote the Cyborg Manifesto. I wonder, my analysis and my research point to these things. At that time, there were the computer networks. These computer networks have turned today into machine learning infrastructures. The military industrial complex, we are talking about the Cold War. That's the time of Donna Haraway, also with Reagan in power in the United States, with Thatcher in the UK, and with Helmut Kohl in Germany. This military industrial computing becomes an artificial intelligence industrial complex. The information systems have turned into data capitalism. Cybernetics has become algorithmic governance. And I read Donna Haraway again, I quote, "The dichotomies might be expressed in the following chart of transitions from the comfortable or hierarchical dominations to the scary new networks I have called the informatics of domination." In the Cyborg Manifesto, Haraway lists a lot of things that she says, like, from this, we have moved to that one, right? I quote just the more relevant that we can use for artificial intelligence. There are other impulses that other parts that she gave in the list that I will be a little bit, that needs more analysis and more research. But these ones, I was like, these ones we can decide if yes or no in the context of artificial intelligence. For instance, before there was representation, no? For instance, I can describe it as, for instance, when you're making a painting, you're representing something, right? You're making a representation, an abstraction of an object. When you're writing a book, you're also making an abstraction. You're representing something, right? From this representation, we are moving to a simulacra, to a copy of the original, and it gets even worse, a copy of the copy of the copy without original, right? Is that happening in the era of artificial intelligence? I argue, yes. Reproduction. From reproduction, in the sense of sexuality, giving birth, having sex, giving birth, having babies, we are moving to duplication, yeah? Duplications, for instance, here we can talk about robotics, sex robots, for instance. You create a robot, you duplicate a human being, you don't need a human being anymore. We're in that stage already, yes. The racial change of being, this is colonialism. Now there was the invention of race, a terrible construct that is based on, a hierarchical, the racial discourse, the racial inventions. From that, we have moved to neo-imperialism and United Nations humanism. And I put here, personally, I find that this change is a little bit partially, because now with artificial intelligence, this new, the United States, people behind OpenAI, Peter Thiel, and all these technobrogs, they are actually trying to destroy this kind of organizations, the United Nations. Even worse, a state nation. And it's quite interesting. That's worth the conference, because it's fascinating why they have plan in their head. And it's basically destroying democracy and putting neo-fascism at work using all technologies possible. Then the family, the market, the factory, going to work in a factory and things like that. Now that has turned into women in the integrated circuit. And I will argue, is that happening? Yes. Labor, as we understood it before, we go to work 8 hours. That is turned into robotics. Now come more and more robots, machines, doing our job. Is that happening? Yes. Maybe not, partially. Maybe not in a big scale, but it's already coming. White capitalist patriarchy has turned into informatics of domination. And I think that at this stage, you understand what I mean by informatics of domination. Is this happening? And I argue partially, because I think that we still have white capitalist patriarchy still running the show. Example, Donald Trump, no? Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. These are very important figures with a lot of political power, political, technological, and economical power, and they happen to be also very racist characters, right? Then we are moving also from mind, meaning the human mind, to artificial intelligence, right? And I say there also partially. We're still not out of the game. Zum Glück. Now I want to go to the last part, which is ecosystems of resistance. Haraway is a philosopher she was a socialist and a feminist. So many things that she did was really for calling for emancipation. And Haraway's concept of the cyborg is, as we saw before, strongly influenced by Chela Sandoval, who introduces the concept of oppositional consciousness in the 80s. This concept, oppositional consciousness, if you analyze the semantics, opposition, yeah? Opposition is something that rebels, something that pushes back, yeah? Consciousness, what's consciousness? Knowledge, to understand what's going on, to understand the game. That's what Chela Sandoval meant, and that's what Donna Haraway took from that concept. Oppositional consciousness highlights the agency and resilience of marginalized individuals and communities, recognizing and valuing diverse forms of knowing. This is important, and resisting oppression. It offers a new framework for understanding and addressing social inequalities. Now I'm going to give you some examples that I think will fit perfectly with the figure of the cyborg as resistance. And these examples, this book is from 2006. Haraway was talking in a time in which there was not a lot of, many things were happening, but not in the scale as today. At that time, many people don't even have access to email, right? Or probably, yeah. Today, with technology, it also has a different kind of impact in the society, because today we experience Gaza in live stream, like we are there, right? That's a power, no? And now we have many people of color, indigenous subjectivities, Black people, Latino women, Asian women, many have begun starting getting access to education and knowledge. That has changed. Today, before I was coming here, I was listening to a journalist from India. He's also an intellectual, and he was pointing out precisely to this change, that now things are global, and we think global, and that's also kind of terrifying for many people, because they are like, oh my God, they are coming, you know, because now we can see that it is time to split the cake, you know. At the same time, other people are saying, no, 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 no. It is time to keep the cake up for certain people, and for certain people out of the sharing, right? Back to Donna Haraway. This is an example of what she dreamed with the figure of the cyborg, and is, for instance, incorporating indigenous knowledge systems into artificial intelligence governance. This is contemporary politics, in which people are understanding that indigenous people have actually key knowledge for ecology, and that they are doing, that we need to start a dialogue in how can we fight together as human beings against climate change. Also, this is another example. These people, indigenous people, they are learning to use artificial intelligence, and that's a positive side of artificial intelligence, using the machine, using the technology for ecological purposes, in order to track if something is going on in the forest, in order to track if the animals are fine, in order to track if the plants are okay. They are using this kind of technologies with their own knowledge, and also the new knowledge integrating the machine for protecting ecosystems. And I find that fantastic. That's for me an example of cyborg politics. Also, I put you another example. This comes from The Guardian. This is Ecuador, no? Indigenous people building or incorporating the concept of summa Kasai into its approach to development. What I am trying to say here is that now we are seeing an epistemological collaboration. It is not anymore like the West saying what ecology is and coming to other countries and saying, I'm going to liberate you. Now we are seeing, no, I don't need your liberation. Thank you so very much. Actually, we are resisting that type of liberation, because the machines that you are bringing actually extracting the minerals of Mother Earth. So what we see is that indigenous people saying, actually, our knowledge, it's very important for producing other types of being, other types of thinking, and other types of rationality, right? Then Congo, I brought you also Africa, because there they are also implementing the use of artificial intelligence in order to protect the second lung for breathing, the second huge ecosystem in Earth is located in Congo. There is another one. Do you know where the other one is? There are two. Anyone? Okay. Colombia?
The Amazon.
Exact, Brazil. But Latin America too. It's Africa and Latin America. The irony behind is that Africa and Latin America are the continents that are more exploited with artificial intelligence. That's where the minerals come from, extractivism, data extractivism. The destruction is just unbelievable. So there is an irony happening here. But at the same time, we have within these oppressed continents a lot of resistance, as you can see, and people saying, reclaiming the rights that ecosystems and animals have, using artificial intelligence in another way. These are books that I also recommend you. As I say, today we can talk about other types of subjectivities that are also present in theoretical discourse, and they are now publishing books and saying, doing analysis and exposing the world destruction that is going on around the world. These are some of the books that I really recommend you. This cybernetic border, for instance, these are people in the United States, migrants that have been targeted by artificial intelligence as migrants with, ICE, if you know the case ICE, this police brutality, basically a Gestapo. Then you have the Black technical object on machine learning and the aspiration of Black being. That's come from the Black community, a Black theorist that analyzes also the effects of artificial intelligence in the Black community. Then you have Insolvent, how to reorienting computing for just sustainability, and that's basically also reclaiming technology for ecology. They are trying, and the question here, I'm not an expert in the matter, but it's a very important question. Can we do artificial intelligence otherwise? That's a very fundamental question, and we are testing the terrain. Data grab, the new colonialism of big tech, and how to fight back. People saying, not only I do a critique, not only I expose, but also I give you alternatives for resistance. And that's precisely what the society needs today. New movements that could help us understand this technological turn. And now I come to the end, the conclusion, and I'm going to close with technopolitics. That's also the concept that I was using in the conference. What does Donna Haraway mean by technopolitics? Basically is doing politics within a society that is so strong focus on technology like ours today. Resistance to artificial intelligence is not simply resisting the machines. No? It is resistance to the political and economic systems embedded in technological infrastructures. From Haraway's perspective, the task is neither to reject technology nor to celebrate uncritically, not to celebrate it uncritically, but to contest who designed it, whose knowledge it incorporates, and which world it makes possible. So we need to be studying this new technology. We need to understand it. We need to analyze it. We need to research it, and we need to send proposals to the public. Because the other ones, they are already running. They want no regulation, I'm in the United States. China is a different thing. I'm not gonna go there today. And the last slide is resistance is the act to know the difference, to collaborate with many actors from the periphery to the center, not from the center to the periphery, which means not the West telling the global, so how to do things, but more from the West has to listen to the peripheries. That's what it means. And to politicize technology. We need to politicize technology. For that, we need a lot of knowledge. We need people that understand artificial intelligence. We need people that program artificial intelligence from a very different perspective as Elon Musk and co. Peter Thiel, terrible creature. And yeah, that's it.